Hello?
Hi.
I wanted to say like it's Saturday again, but last time we recorded on Sunday, I think. But one way or the other, this is Biweekly episode number 2, and the hosts are there, like always. That's you, Slava Rudnitsky.
And you, Dima. And that's our second episode of season 2.
What was season 1? Do we want to talk about that or just head straight into the future?
I'm fine.
All right.
Today we are going to talk about definitions, explications, and difficulties of being an expert. And could you tell us why we are discussing this topic?
It's a nice way to frame the question. As always, it's difficult to me now to recount the genesis of different things, including how we come to talk about expertise. I remember hearing about the book, The Death of Expertise, quite a long time ago, and it got me intrigued. I never got to read the book, but from not necessarily reviews, but references to that book, I thought it might be worthy reading. And then at the end of our season 1 of this very podcast, we discussed postmodernism, and it does have some connection to some of the ideas that potentially are outlined at that book. And this is how I propose that we discuss this topic. The more so we consider ourselves to be a bit of experts, right? So we might have challenges in modern world as well.
So you've picked an article, then we have a number of questions, and your show notes look quite impressive. So it took me actually about 20 minutes just to go through and make sure I can comprehend everything you've written there. So I've been constantly impressed by your thorough preparation of the show notes. So we'll start with an article, yeah? That's basically actualization of the topic of being an expert in the modern world on the website, the Federalist.com.
Yeah, that's weird site, but this article is named The Death of Expertise, and it's article by Tom Nichols, and this article he later developed into a full-fledged book by the same name. But we need to, I guess, well, at least I need to confess that I have not read the book, and maybe after listening to this podcast, you would understand why I may never read this book, but we will probably get to that.
So let's start with your outline of the article. Like, why do you think it's a good piece of reading, or why was it thought-provoking for you, or why did you decide to start with this article in the first place?
It's interesting. Like I said, I've heard good words about the book, so I expected article to be kind of good as well. But having read this article now, I do not necessarily subscribe to the statement that this is a good reading. It's not bad reading, but it is different than what I have expected. So the author there is, the way I read the article, he is primarily concerned that times have changed, and earlier it was kind of sufficient to get things moving in the right direction by simply asserting an expertise, by bringing in an expert, like a true expert, following what they say, and that should have yielded on many occasions like positive, necessary results. Now times have changed. Everyone and their dog can claim to be an expert and share their opinion, not necessarily expert opinion. And that muddies the conversation and confuses the public, and now everyone does their own thing. Nobody trusts anyone, let alone experts, and the world goes straight to hell.
Well, the way I understood this article, then there is a challenge that people tend to share their experience about something, and unlike, let's say, older times, when there used to be fewer publications, fewer journals, fewer books published on a specific domain, there are many alternative opinions these days on things, especially when it comes not to some hard science, but psychology, for instance. Like, you can basically find the research proving pretty much anything if you Google deep enough into ResearchGate.
Yeah, that's right.
And this article, to me, sounds like a concern that people tend to mix up expert opinions and just experience descriptions of people. And it's really hard to distinguish, since people who share their experiences are getting more and more appreciated. Like, they get their reviews submitted somewhere, they get likes for those, and sometimes they are good writers, and it seems like a more captivating piece of reading. For instance, when you are sick, and you can go and read not doctor's prescriptions or some professional advice how to treat this, but other people's stories, how they got COVID and things that they were doing to treat it, and how it ended up. And there is balance that people kind of are influenced less by expert opinions and more by public experiences. That's how I got it. Was something like that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know that I have a tendency to dramatize certain things and maybe take them a bit too far to one of the extremes.
So is there anything specific about the article you'd like to tackle?
I think in the article, I guess two interesting two ideas worth talking about. One, we kind of glossed over the earlier. It used to be sufficient to be an expert, right? When we acknowledge that someone is an expert, they could steer where things are going in their domain of expertise, one way or the other. Like, people would follow their advice or kind of stick to their opinion and not deviate from that too much. But then the other thought is that what changed is he didn't call it a demise, but something about gatekeepers. So there are no more gatekeepers that would prevent bad things or unqualified opinions from being shared and spread widely. And I think he says that that's the problem. Earlier it was better when we had gatekeepers who would keep out things not worthy of public's attention. And
earlier means like pre-internet.
Yeah. I think that's the idea, like the pre-internet thing. Because that in our notes I put this, that we now with internet. I didn't put this like the word internet in the notes, but it's implied, kind of, right? It became so easy to create different kind of things, like write texts, take pictures or drawings, create videos, and distribute them to like a whole bunch of people, like really whole bunch, like millions of people at the same time. And it became available to nearly everyone, like ourselves. And author kind of, at least it seemed to me that he portrays that as a bad thing, and then focuses on downsides of gatekeepers.
And what's your opinion on that?
I think that's a good question. I think that there are two dimensions in this for me. One is that yes, it may create some complications, but I think it was inevitable that things will go this way. Whole history of our civilization shows that things that used to be difficult, costly, but useful, they tend to become less costly, less difficult, and more accessible to more people if they're useful. And like sharing and spreading knowledge is useful thing. So I think that that was doomed to happen. But then on the other hand, we cannot discard the positive things of that trend, because it made it possible for people to be heard, for more people to be heard, and not to be kind of constrained by those old school gatekeepers who would not let new ideas take roots, new good ideas. Of course, that applies to all kinds of ideas, including bad ideas. But I think there are definitely positive sides to it, and the inevitability of society moving in this direction is something we need to deal with, instead of like feeling too nostalgic about those old times.
I don't really see an issue here. I think that we've been facing the same problem for quite a while, and actually this openness to getting alternative opinions or just opinions is more helpful than harmful. For instance, if we take some scientific research things, before people could actually doubt or question or try to replicate those things, and we would unquestionably believe in some statements or conclusions that people were like doctors. Let's say medicine or like the entire medical industry has been undisputable. Like people would never doubt or question, or like they say you have to nail something into your head and you just trust it because there is one doctor, maybe two doctors, and that's all you can get here. And currently, you can at least see that there are a lot of directions of treatment. Some of them are more effective, some of them are less effective. People are getting more input. What do they do with this input? That's the question. Like if we behave irresponsibly and we trust first opinions, or we get into manipulations, or we trust some, let's say, unclear statements without evidence, that's basically our fault, not the fault of people who shared these opinions or gatekeepers who didn't keep those opinions out. And since it's kind of impossible to stop, then the only thing that remains in our area of influence is our own filters that we apply when we work with information. So I think that this overflow or overload of points of view is helpful, because we learn how to prioritize, how to get the gist, the general idea, how to see evidence and backups of things. It's a painful process of learning, because, of course, it was kind of easier, just to have one encyclopedia where all the truth in the world has been stored. And as the world is getting more complex, it's kind of harder. But I think the trend overall is healthy, and in the long run, the experts and good evidence-based research, materials, conclusions, opinions will still be there.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great thought. I totally agree with that. That earlier it was kind of maybe sort of easier because there was just one, like either one person that you had. Well, you had no other choice but trust them and do what they say, or like institutions or something like that. Like before the Enlightenment, that people had to trust. Well, not they had to. They had no other choice rather than trusting church and do what church says, because there was nobody else saying what to do or trying to spread other ideas. Then it all changed. Then it's changing once again. It's becoming to a certain extent more difficult, so that you have to have your own opinion, kind of, maybe not opinion, but judgment, and also accept responsibilities for the consequences of that judgment. So if you trust that person or that opinion versus other opinion, you are the one who live with the consequences of that. But yep.
Was it different in the old good times?
I think
you just never had a choice.
Yep. Yeah, and it's tricky, right? So if you don't have a choice and the default thing is kind of correct or right for you or beneficial for you, then this is a maximum efficiency that can be there. You don't waste time making a choice. The thing you're given is the best thing there is. Like, everyone is kind of happy. But then if that one thing that you're given is not the right thing, then it all kind of breaks really badly, I think.
All right, I believe we are pretty much done with the article. Could you please define what you understand by an expert?
I don't know. Like, I guess my widest definition of an expert would be a person that knows something, preferably as much as possible, about a particular area or topic, such that this knowledge can make practical difference when applied.
Yeah, Oxford Languages pretty much agree with you. According to this dictionary, an expert is a person who is very knowledgeable about or skillful in a particular area. So either knowledgeable or experienced. In this case, yes, if you take this sort of definition, then my writing instructor was an expert because one was skillful.
All right, so then that brings us to a question. How would you define who an expert is?
I have a feeling that the term very knowledgeable is really vague, because how do we understand a person is very knowledgeable or not very knowledgeable? When it comes to some practical things, let's say engineering, if a person knows a lot, doesn't mean the person is actually useful or helpful or can do something for your project or for your team. I've talked to a number of experts who estimated my project starting from 15K and like up to 50K. When we started working on it, it cost us 7K. So twice less than the most optimistic estimate by experts. So being knowledgeable and having some practical experience in doing things can be different. That's why if we just take the definition of being knowledgeable, then I don't always take this expert advice for granted. I prefer a mix of things, like some practical experience, some feedback from people who have worked with this person. I think it works pretty much the same in most industries. When you pick a dentist, even when you look at the Uber driver rating, you can kind of see that, all right, that's like all fives, like hundreds of fives, multiple years. You probably can trust this person. Doesn't mean you should do that blindly, and stop checking the surrounding or making sure that the person is not drunk or is driving you in the same direction. No, you're still responsible for your life and for your choices. But it's some premises that you could use to make your judgment, to make your call. So I don't think that I put as much value in the word expert if it comes to knowledge.
Would like plus one on that point, and when you, I don't have it open, but the Oxford or whatever definition that you told us, when I think to me that's missing one important bit, which I I think I added to my definition, which was like knowledge or experience that can make practical difference. I think, much like you said, knowledge by itself is not sufficient. It needs to be kind of useful or applicable to a problem at hand, being an engineering problem or something else. All right, cool. As we usually do, like halftime into an episode, we finally came to definitions, and now that we are equipped with those definitions, I have an interesting question to you, or to us, I guess, rather, given that we kind of agree that not necessarily everyone who call themselves an expert are an expert that we would call an expert. How would you tell a real expert from like a fake expert or a false expert, or from even a charlatan?
Well, basically, if we have the definition that it's a person with knowledge, skills, and experience, we could check these three areas. Like we could see whether the person can confirm having sufficient amount of knowledge. That's what basically you do at job interviews. Yeah, you ask all those random questions like, what is this and what is that? Then you check the skills, how the person is able to do something. And experience is more of a thinking thing. Yeah, when the method or the approach or the system thinking, decision-making algorithm is there, and you don't see logical fallacies or cognitive biases in the process of decision-making.
Good, but that's when you are hiring a person. What if it's like a motorcycle instructor driving instructor?
I can give you a more relevant example, a financial advisor for our team.
All right.
Like this person has assumingly more expertise than anyone on the team. We don't have the CFO, and we don't need a full-time CFO for our size of the company. So we invited, let's say, an outsource specialist who meant to build the tracking system for our finance, generate all this budget, profit and loss things, and etc., cash flow reports. And it's kind of a combination of a number of things. Firstly, just the way a person explains own opinion, ideas, and you can see whether it's logical, like it makes sense, and one A comes from B or B comes from A, and you can see the transitions. It's evidence-based, so if you Google some things that made you doubtful and you find opinions on that, and you find some books or laws or references to this thing, and it is valid, and then that you can clearly understand that it's simple enough for you, because I think the person who overcomplicates things usually doesn't understand them very well. It's my personal trigger when somebody is getting into details so deeply that actually forgets to look, like, what's this thing about the wood and the forest, the trees.
You confuse trees for the forest.
Anyway, there is a saying that you basically get very deep into details and you forget seeing the helicopter view or the bigger picture around you. And that's how it went. So we had a few conversations. It seemed logical, valid. I liked the experience, and it seemed relevant to my team. So we agreed, and it was quite fruitful. In about 7 months, we've integrated new accounting system with all the financial metrics that we needed.
Cool. Yep, because I guess that pretty much matches my view on the same thing. Like I would expect a real expert to explain things, not simply say like do X, but do X because this, and if you are not doing X, these are the things that are going to happen, and hopefully they can be kind of mapped to our past experiences so that we understand indeed if we don't do X, then bad things or would happen, or good things would not happen if we do not do X. And you got it very. There was a very, very interesting thought that expert would be able to make it understandable and approachable for other people, right? Even who do not possess the same, like obviously they do not possess the same level of expertise. Expert would be able to explain concepts at different levels, right?
I would say unless it's something very, very specific, like let's say nuclear physicist who works on like some research and papers and calculations and stuff, probably doesn't actually need this sort of skill because one has defined expertise in, I don't know, calculating nuclear reactors, and has built a number of those or somehow calculated or designed a number of those.
Well, I would kind of disagree with that. I would see this as a sign of a true expert if they can explain their super narrow or super specific area of expertise to a 5-year-old.
Let me put it this way. There are people who work with an open market and there are people who work like somewhere indoors. Let's say people who make tires. There are experts who do the tests and do the experiments, and their job is to make a tire high quality.
Right.
And I don't really care how they explain this because they have the entire marketing team to do this job for them. They have to find the data, give this data to the manager. The manager will sell it to people who buy it later on. But if you're an expert who actually talks to a client directly, then this is your competency that you actually need developed.
Right. Well, it's interesting, right? We have different areas of expertise kind of interacting with one another. The expertise, like hard expertise in the like area like tire making or something, and then the expertise in communicating stuff to wider audience. But yeah, I guess that makes sense. That makes sense. One can be a true, like real, honest to God expert, even they maybe cannot explain this too well to non-experts, but maybe other experts can see like, whoa, this person is bright because they know so much and see connections.
So even in the medical industry, which we mentioned previously, like there are doctors who actually work with patients directly, and for them this skill is essential. Like this is actually like half of their job is explaining things that they see. And then there are people who work in clinical trials, like they work with data, multiple, hundreds and thousands of samples. They have to put those together, organize experiments, and run this research in a evidence-based way. And that's their main expertise. And then they give this charts or Excels to people, and these people can draw their conclusions.
Yep, that's fair enough. I almost see myself in this description, because even though I think I can explain things to people, I'd rather spend time kind of digging deeper into stuff. But let's look at the opposite thing to that. So we just discussed how to confirm that the person we are talking to is an expert. What would be for you, at least, the telltale signs of a person not being an expert when they claim they are?
Pretty much when they claim they are, they probably are not.
Right.
I know really few people who have to, or who actually need to claim that they're experts in a specific area if they feel confident about that. Like people know that they're experts and there is no need to identify themselves. So whenever I see a descriptor, let's say on LinkedIn, that the person is guru, expert, or ninja, or any other sort of deep status, instead of actually what kind of work or benefit can I get from working with this person, that's usually a sign for me that I should be careful. because it seems like we live in the era of informational business when people can sell their opinion for quite high price to mass audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And self-presentation and pitching of their achievements is getting, as I know, a marketing tool, is becoming a marketing tool. All this personal branding stuff and etc. So for me, the word expert in the description is a sign when person spends too much time highlighting personal achievements or some. And probably the last thing would be whenever I hear some conclusions from the person that seem biased or I don't know, what would be the word if you say logical, with logical fallacies or containing?
Yeah, with containing or based on flawed logic.
If it feels faulty, then probably I would just double check the previous experience, review from other people, see. Just usually it's more an intuitive feeling. It's really hard to get into specific criteria. What about you?
Yeah, I think the first item matches to yours. Like you don't really need to tell you're an expert to kind of prove you're an expert. And yeah, I totally agree with that. Like continued reiteration. I'm an expert. I'm an expert. It's like, are you really? And the second one would be more than it would be necessary appeal to trust or not being able to explain things. Like if you ask them, like you tell us X, like why exactly? No, you should trust me. I'm an expert. I'm a Harvard alumni. I'm an ex CEO, whatever. Just like trust me. This is X. Why?
Kind of reminds me of Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Like this is hard science. You have no choice but believe in it.
Is it? Did he say something like that in the book?
Yeah. Like his tone of voice about the evidence that was presented there was pretty straightforward. Saying like, guys, you cannot possibly misinterpret the conclusions from this research. And then they tried to replicate the research, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, that's tough. But that would also be a kind of a telltale sign for me when they say, no, just trust me on this one. And that kind of brings me to the next question. Like when people throw around their regalia and stuff, we often, we sometimes refer to this as an appeal to authority, and we kind of see it as a bit of a logical fallacy in argumentation. Like, how would you draw a line between like being an expert and knowing something, like and then, for example, referring to another known expert in the field versus just appeal to authority without any substance behind it?
I think appeal to authority is quite the cultural thing that we sometimes forget about, because there is certain trust to institutions in different areas, or in different nations.
Right.
Like some people trust governments. Scandinavian countries are a good example here.
Right.
Like if the government asks them to stay indoors because it's pandemic, they stay. They don't need the restrictions and regulations and all the watchdogs like to control the thing. But if it comes to, I don't know, something more casual, let's say I was having breakfast with my husband group mates today, and one of them asked whether anyone can recommend a massage therapist. And people say, oh, this guy is quite nice. I like the way he works. He seems like an expert to me. And we give our opinions on what kind of good cases or examples we've had with a number of things. Doesn't mean they're experts in their massage and therapy. I don't know. But we can link our personal experience and case to person and recommend one. I'm not sure I actually answered your question.
That makes a lot of sense. And to me, that would also be like similar to telling the difference between an expert and, let's say, a fake expert. I would expect the expert to be able to kind of dive a bit deeper and at least make an effort or attempt to explain things rather than saying, no, Einstein said that. Or right, like Einstein had reasons to say that. Like, do you know why he said that? And then stuff like this. So like this just throwing a weight behind something without real substance would be appeal to authority, at least to me, and it would be more of a negative thing. But it doesn't always mean a negative thing. It's just maybe like proper thing, like a reference to another.
One more thing to add here. We could also, I think it's just my experience or my cases, but when a person blindly believes in one approach or method and rejects the alternatives, that's usually a red flag for me. Like, I think that at least you should be able to consider and explain things, but not just reject or be triggered by some alternative approaches.
Yeah, totally. Zeal tree would be a sign. No, the person maybe claims that they're an expert, but they're not. And I think that there is a bit of a contradiction in that, right? We would, in general, it may be accepted or viewed as when we come to experts, we want answers from them, and hopefully like desirably like definitive answers, like do this, it's the best way. And more often than not, it seems to me that when you come to a real expert, they would say like, you know what, it depends. And then they would list like, in these circumstances this works, in these other circumstances this works. And when someone says just no, this is the best way, like the agile, whatever, like current hotness is the only right way to go about it, and it's like, yeah, maybe not.
Mm-hmm. And probably one last thing is when people share their opinion about something or their evaluation or assessment of the situation, how backed up it is with some data cases, statistics, or something. I can give an example from an HR industry. Human resources, let's say, vague area with many different approaches and many different methods. There is a number of educators in Ukraine, in Ukrainian IT specifically, who tend to consult or teach others how to run, HR analytics or arrange HR processes.
Right.
And one of positive sides or good examples here would be Anna Golovchenko, who was our guest speaker in one of season 1. In the previous episodes. I really like the way she approaches. Whenever I hear her giving advice to someone or even answering a question, she always backs it up with specific example, case, number, name, or something that where you could double check or see more details there. And when answering the question, an expert says like, well, according to my experience, that's harmful. Thanks, Cap. I think I'm out. Thank you.
Yep. That's a great point. And now that we are ever so slightly moving into more maybe specific workplace kind of situation, in IT, right, that there are engineers, and some of them are deemed to be like more senior engineers, and some of them are like more junior engineers, less experienced ones, and they have opinions, right? Both of them, both kinds of engineers can have opinions, and naturally you would think that more senior engineers are more experty, right? And their opinion is more of an expert opinion worth kind of listening to. But
really,
it does not always happen that way. And then and maybe we can spend a couple of minutes talking about that. And when you were skeptical about listening to expert opinions from senior engineers, why exactly was that?
I don't know. We are actually bringing in a new item here, an expert opinion.
Right.
How is expert opinion different from an opinion?
I guess then that it's coming from an expert. Well,
but if it's just an opinion, it's still an opinion. So just an example that I mentioned previously with Anna. Yeah,
right.
She gives her opinion plus some reference points or data or statistics or cases.
Okay.
If it's just opinion of Anna versus opinion of, I don't know, Bob, then I can't actually distinguish.
That is interesting. Let's dive deep into that, because I very often run into situations where I'm being a bit of a senior engineer. I provide feedback to others about what they do, how they do it, and not rarely that includes advice on how to make things better or differently to achieve better results or better outcomes on certain dimensions. And sometimes it is, I wanted to say easy, but that would not be the right word. Sometimes it's practical to supply those advice with like real in-depth explanation of how it works. Sometimes it might not be practical because it may take like either way too much time, or like something else may get in the way, and then it would.
Do you think we can take an example of code review?
Right. Well, yeah. We can take an example of code review.
And this could actually go two ways. Yeah, it could be the requested code review when I feel doubtful about something. Let's say I'm a junior developer.
Right.
I submit something, and then I ask, like, guys, what do you think about that? And then some people who have more experience come and leave their comments, and then it's still my call whether I accept those or what do I do with them. Or it could be some sort of obligation. There is a protocol where we cannot push something into production before a number of people leave their reviews on something.
Right.
And according to these procedures, I might even be blocked before I reply to all the things. I cannot move forward before I somehow react to all the ideas and comments there.
Yes.
So it does depend on the situation. And I think that there's no such thing as just an expert opinion itself, but it's an interaction with an expert. Let's say I've asked for help and I say, guys, I'm facing this issue. It seems, I don't know, lagging or not working or something doesn't work.
Right.
What would be the best improvement strategy? And then people leave their recommendation or advice. And I can process that and go deeper and research and look for it. Then if you are an expert who is supervising me and you're just leaving your questions, like, would you consider this? Like, what's the alternative to this? What's another way to do that? That's also help, but it's not an opinion. So you're not sharing your input here. Like it's not an opinion itself. It's a question, a coaching question or a guiding question that should help me develop as a junior. It's still your interaction with me. It's useful, but it's not sharing. Like I think you should do A, or not advice.
It's interesting because to me, both of those would be in the same ballpark of being an opinion, but delivered in different ways. Because if I didn't want things to be done differently, why would I ask a question? Did you consider this kind of situation? Right?
Opinion, according to Oxford Dictionary, is a view or a judgment formed about something.
Yep.
If there is no judgment itself in the statement, like it's a question, there might be judgment, like you made your opinion about, or you made your judgment or assessment of the code itself.
Right.
But you didn't label it or name it as, I don't know, bad, ineffective, should be changed here, this doesn't work, or this is not the best way to approach it. It's the process of analysis that you're implying right now too. Like you, as a person who does some sort of assessment, you go through different elements of the system, connections, see how they work together, and then make your call whether it's effective or ineffective for you. But whether you explain this to a person fully, or you just leave the person with a question like, would you consider Python, or would you consider changing your job to product manager instead of development? Well, could be a very different thing. So if there's no advice or statement, I wouldn't say it's an opinion. It's an opinion.
Okay, so two points. So that maybe like one would be to decouple this from a definition of opinion, because I guess to me those are all the same. Like if let's say I as an expert weigh in on something, to me that regardless of the specific form it takes is weighing an opinion, right? Because if I interact with like PR or something, push request with the to changes to code, I can react. Oh yeah, looks great. Let's move on with this, and I can respond with a question, and then guess my responding with a question implies that I did not respond with yes, let's move forward with this, which already kind of means a bit of a judgment and opinion that it's probably not good enough to be stamped with let's move forward.
You see, I think I might be biased in this regard, because for me, opinion is either a statement or a recommendation. And there are other forms of influence that you could have as an expert. And sharing your opinion, because I see some sort of connection here that basically anything an expert says is an expert opinion. And for me, there are different forms. There is an expert discussion. There is an expert analysis. There is an expert advice. There is a question, and this question could be a clarification question, leading question, or there are multiple ways you could approach that. So probably I just have more definitions here, and you have something more united, like an input from an expert. Yeah, let's put it this way.
That makes sense, I guess. Yeah. So, and I guess in our notes, I was referring to this. Yeah, I used word opinion because expert opinion seems to be like almost an idiom in this space. But I guess maybe feedback or that kind of like input, as you said, might be a better word to denote it. All right. So then you're saying that those who deem themselves experts should follow certain rules on how they deliver their feedback. Is there a word? Feedback.
It's a book with feedback.
Something like that. Delivering their feedback to be.
Oh, it's feedback on Facebook.
That takes it too far. So they have to follow certain rules to kind of be heard. And what do you think those rules are? And or maybe as I put it is in our notes, if you're an expert, how to be an expert in, I don't know how you would translate this to English, in an ecological way without being too imposing on other people and hampering their opinion and their voice and their thoughts and creativity.
Let me split it into a few points. Firstly, would be probably the demand on your advice, like whether people actually ask you to help or you just see that something is not working well and you come with your feedback without a request from the person who gets this feedback. Let's say you see that a manager is making a mistake on the meeting. You could just come after the meeting and share your feedback, or even invite, say like, I think I have some feedback about your performance here on the meeting. If you're interested, I may share it with you like at our one-to-one or right now.
Okay.
The second thing is my colleague Anna names it the area of the nearest growth. You can see that the person is capable of improving in a specific area. You won't be giving architectural or system design advice to a junior developer. Like, you can see how to do it better in a systematic way, like you know how to design the system better. But this guy is actually working on a specific piece, and the entire approach that one could take is not still there to comprehend. It's really hard for the person to grasp the whole idea of your advice. Your advice is not graded, must be graded to something that the person can actually deal with. Let me give you an example. If we speak about, coding style, of course, you know that there is a way better solution somewhere when you see a critical mistake. Right. But you could either help a person fix this mistake right now in this context, or teach this person think differently overall and make decisions differently and operate with frameworks and do all this sort of higher level things. And I see that quite many experts, they tend to do that. Like, you come to a doctor with a toothache and one teaches you how to live this life, but not to actually fix this issue. So I would say that when I give feedback to my manager, I should know or should be sure that this person is able to handle this feedback, that it doesn't require too much preparation. Let me give you another example. I've requested the first budget from the team. Like, they've never done budgeting before. They bring me this document and I can give them feedback. I know what a very good budget looks like, but to get there, we need a few iterations. And their nearest area of growth is organizing the structure of the document. Like, we will come to the visual appearance, to integration with other systems and everything later. Let's start with just organizing the doc so the structure is there. Then put in the sufficient level of details. And it goes step by step. And I think that quite often we don't do that as experts who give recommendation. We can just spill all things we have in mind, and it's not operational. It's really hard to process.
No, that's interesting. I do agree that, circling back to your first point, that situations where feedback was requested and situations where one wants to provide feedback to someone without an explicit requests are different and probably should be approached differently. But the last one is very interesting, because the way you describe it, you look at this from the point of view of the person receiving feedback. Well, I would be thinking that there are three elements at play. The person receiving feedback, like naturally, even in your model, that there is a person giving feedback. But I also think that there is a third element, which is like the actual, if it's a work setting, like actual deliverable that we are looking at. And while I understand and agree with the benefit and value of enabling the person to grow, there are situations where the deliverable itself is equally as important. If it's a component that is critical for one of the subsequent milestones and is meant to be used by multiple different people or different teams, there might not be enough time for me to go through all the steps with that person, and getting their deliverable to a usable state faster may take priority over following them through the ladder of understanding why exactly it needs to be done this way.
Jim, in your example, I think an expert needs some expert opinion on managing and recruiting people to the proper positions. Because if there is an incompetent person who completely failed to do the task and it was not monitored in the process. So basically you have already gotten a crucial element of the system, which is not functional completely. And nobody was actually overseeing this in the process. I think that's a huge blunder by someone in the previous stages. And it's really not like, it's impossible to, not impossible. Impossible is a hard word. It's really hard, and it will be a lot of effort from all other team members to fix this issue at this stage.
Well, I guess maybe what I had in mind is not as dramatic as that said, but I guess to the point that this is not a matter of person being incompetent, like completely. It's just at some point the decision they made were, I wanted to say like because they're not an expert, but just because maybe they did not possess the necessary information or necessary experience, and they did not seek for that expertise or outside advice. They made slightly disadvantaged decisions, which puts their work at not their work as a job position, but what they're putting together kind of at risk. And what I've heard from you, like in this model, was that we need to make sure that the person can come around and understand what was wrong and how they made it wrong and how to fix that. And I think I'm trying to explore a situation where we don't exactly have time to do that right now. That would be definitely a thing to do, but we might need some corrective actions like sooner.
So what's your suggestion?
I don't know. Like, I guess I don't have a suggestion particularly. I'm saying that this is a challenging.
Let's look at the example.
Challenging situation. All right. Yeah.
Let's say we are hiring an UI UX designer, and this person just came to I don't know, upgrade our front end part for our system that has been working for some time.
Right.
The person comes with the first, let's say not first, the second iteration of the draft of what it's going to look like. And I feel that the concept is wrong, the details are wrong, and there are 7 major critical things that are not working there. But if I explain everything I see, that would be overwhelming and discouraging for the person to actually do the work once again, especially considering that since we changed the concept, the details are actually less important, like all the mistakes and things that are minor. And I would focus on the main thing, like the concept itself. Like, let's at first agree on the high level direction where we are heading, and then dig deeper into details, approaches, styles, etc.
Right.
So in this iteration of feedback, I wouldn't be sharing all my thoughts or everything I see. I would just focus on the crucial thing that would turn this process in the proper direction.
Yep. But yeah, I guess that makes sense. But what if the situation is similar but ever so slightly different? That the design that you got back for review is okay, right? It follows the concept and so on and so forth, but then it includes elements that are ineffective. Let's say we are designing a mobile application, and like whatever the design, like we are not talking about the application itself. We don't have time for that, I guess. But the designer made buttons so small then when the application UI is translated into other languages, non-English, it would not fit like the names of the buttons like properly. And this is a big deal because your application is supposed to be translated into multiple different languages. And you need to kind of tell them, this needs to be changed, right? Because I know this is going to be a problem when we translate this into German.
Why should it be hard to deliver this sort of news? Once the person already got the concept and improved on the previous points, I believe that at such level of polishing the design or improving, making the change requests and stuff, this is just casual work. At this stage, it doesn't really matter. You can make a list of like 12 improvements to the draft and just send it. And unless you're a jerk and you actually like criticize it brutally or describe some personal attitude instead of explaining what the issue is, I think if the person managed to improve the concept and move in the proper direction, then working on details is just a matter of time and budget.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally can see that, and I guess that boils down to difficulty of talking about things that are meant to be specific in an abstract way, right? We're coming up with examples right as we speak, and in this example, it is something where expert feedback can be substantiated with real world data, right? We can, if I'm saying that, hey, when translated into other languages, it may not fit the names for the buttons, and I can show an example. I go to Google Translate it into German, and it will be like 40 character word in German, and it would not fit into that label. So it's a bit of a less of an example that what I kind of had in mind, where things are not as easy to substantiate with real world data, and the things that are based more on expertise or experience, which may not be exactly easy to translate into simple or digestible or even representative examples to persuade that other person to do things differently.
Can you think of a case with such challenging situation?
Well, I can, so that it can be, it will be abstract in any way. So let's imagine that we have, we are building a subsystem or component which checks rules for the data processed by another component. And we want this system to be extensible. So we design it in a way where each rule is represented by a class that has a function that checks the rule and returns true or false. So it gets the input, the same as the other component that does the real work gets. And it like does some checks and processing and things here and there, and returns true or false, whether it's a good data or not a good data. And we roughly now anticipate to have a dozen of said rules, but there is a potential that it may go further than that. And in order to be able to deal with them in an easier to digest way, we want to have those rules be grouped in different dimensions. Let's say like understandability of the data. And we have several, and for the dimension, we define several levels of how understandable the data is. And the idea would be to have like, if first three rules are matched, that gives us basic understandability. If two additional rules are matched, then it's like advanced understandability. And that like if even more rules match, that would be like super advanced, mega understandability. And there might be different ways of how you integrate those levels with the rules themselves. One way would be to have each rule store which level of a dimension it corresponds to. And another way would be for the rule to be a thing in and of itself, like self-contained something. and then have an external storage which says that for level 1, we need rules 1, 2, and 3. So that rules in this model do not know about the levels, but the level calculator knows about the rules. Arguably, in the long run, that latter method is better because it has fewer dependencies between.
Arguably.
Okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But functionally, they are roughly the same. And the benefit to the second method is that in the longer run,
it's scalable.
It's potentially more scalable. So when someone comes with,
I'm trying to find a person here,
and then someone comes and implements this thing using the first approach where they lump together rules themselves and the levels. And as we discussed, that it's functionally does what is supposed to do. But in the long run, it has drawbacks. And as an expert, you would want this latter solution to be implemented, where levels and the rules themselves are two separate things and that can be changed independently.
And why do you think it's so challenging for a person who has already picked, let's say, the functional and less scalable method to accept feedback or questions or think of the scalability?
I don't know.
You were building up.
No,
this case.
I mean, but here it is like their opinion versus experts' opinion. They say like this is good enough.
Versus.
Sorry.
Why is it versus? Can you give me the case like people defend this position or who's making the call here? Can we use some, I don't know, a developer and team lead or?
All right. So like the developer implemented the first method, and then the team lead in the review says that I'd rather us have the second approach to implement this, and then
the developer rejects this. That works fine.
This is fine. We don't really need it. Or I feel like from some other people, like product designer or something, someone else, I heard like, this is what's required. We don't need this like separation. No one is talking about separation of those two concepts.
I would actually refer here another podcast, Soft Skills Engineering. A few episodes ago, they had the opposite issue. How can a developer deal with all this expert advice, especially when it's not actually related to the functionality of this specific build? Like, quite often experts are people who think in the long run and sometimes longer than it's actually needed. And when you have to, before you can actually get something into the production, you have to discuss so many questions about the architecture, scalability, high loads, and other aspects of development that are not actually related to this specific feature today. So if you think it's critical, how do you communicate that scalability is of high priority and it should be included at this stage here? Like, was there some kind of planning session before this?
Well, let's suppose
method was chosen.
What if there were not?
So let's say just this person was working in the autonomous team, like just making their calls, and then someone is just asked to review the decisions and methods.
Right. Yeah, something like that.
Then maybe if they agreed that for now they don't care about scalability and it's not their priority because they had, I don't know, a different one, I don't know, the pace, it was needed fast and it was the faster decision and all people on the team agreed it was a better call.
But it's not made into kind of production yet, and arguably the effort required for both to implement both methods or to convert from method 1 to method 2 is rather negligible. But it gives us some tangible, albeit longer term benefits to it.
Right.
So this is like truly like an expert thing. Like the person with more experience in the field kind of knows something which can prevent bad things from happening in the future.
If they actually happen at all. It's like saying that, let me give you a teaching example from my team. Like if we have an expert educator who is looking at a junior teacher, and this junior teacher is doing some decent work, like the students are happy, they're taking progress, things are working fine, but this teacher is building too friendly relationship there. Like he's losing this edge between being professional and being friendly. And this expert methodologist can warn about the potential consequences of this behavior. Yeah.
Right.
And then if it is actually crucial and it's a long-term project, and we understand that this teacher is going to work with this team for years from now, of course, it should be somehow, tackled by an instructor. If it's a short-term program, and this is more of an educational thing, like for your future things, please consider being less friendly, because such teaching style will not let you advance into longer-term programs. Tudums, it's just a theoretical advice, yeah, like that this teaching style could be harmful. So I'm trying to understand the context here. Like if not you, but if an expert is invited from just an outside, out of the team to review something, does this expert understand the principle of decision making? Like what are the success criteria for the feature or the product or the system itself? Whether scalability is a thing at all.
This situation there, yes, it was a bit different, right? We start with the developer and team lead, so this is not an outside expert. So that the team lead is kind of responsible in a way for like all the output of the team, right? In a sense, he's put there, right, because of his experience and supposedly his ability of preventing bad things from happening.
May I ask one more clarification question? Sorry. How was this task set at the first place? Like, was it delegated into like, here's the issue, find the solution, or here's the issue, find the solution, considering scalability and applicability?
Well, let's say it was the first one. It was not. Scalability itself is not a goal of this thing. It's just the decision that was made gives up flexibility that we could have for free. You know what I'm trying to say? That's like similar to how you come to a department store and you need to buy, I don't know, like 20 kilograms of sugar, and you can buy that in 5 kilogram packs, 10 kilogram packs, or half a kilogram packs. No matter what you choose, you get 20 kilos of sugar. But if you get that in 10 kilogram packs, you get to load and unload that thing faster than when you get 40 of half a kilogram packs. So this is this kind of thing. So the end result is the same. We just give up something that we could have for free.
I think this is not a generic question like how to deliver an expert opinion in vacuum, but it's a specific question of how to deliver an expert opinion to this person. Because the reason this developer could reject this feedback could have so many roots that actually no matter how you shape or phrase or explain this thing, it might still not be accepted. It depends on multiple factors. Yeah, let's say the level of expertise of developer itself. I know that people who have plenty of personal experience, when they get direct advice how to do things, they get into some sort of defensive position, into defending their call and their decision just as a safety mechanism. And if they're being asked, like, what can we do to reach scalability, they can feel and share and be more open to this thing rather than just reacting to a specific recommendation or even an instruction. Yeah, if it's a specific guideline, like, please consider this, this, and this. Plus, we could also think that, like, what's the relationship between people who set the tasks, people who check the tasks? There are so many factors here. It's really hard to fix an issue without understanding the full context.
I agree to an extent. Indeed, in every situation, there are so many factors that influence what's going on and the outcomes. I still think that there are parallels to kind of the expert versus public kind of conundrum in a way, but I can see that how a solution for this specific situation can be drawn from specifics of the situation itself. But I also think that there may be lessons to be learned from a more general view on the problem, and then seeing how to apply those general considerations to a specific situation like that.
We should also keep in mind whether this developer actually considers the team lead as an expert and knows about the expertise of this person enough to trust the opinion.
But yeah, that's what I guess makes it interesting, or kind of not straightforward, right? That's almost the same as, like, I'm from McKinsey. You need to listen to what I'm saying about how you should do sales.
I'm from McKinsey. That's an appeal to authority. That's
but I'm a team lead on this team is as much of an appeal to authority to me.
It is, but that's not what I meant. I didn't mean the developer doesn't know the position of the person.
Right.
When we defined expertise, we meant the experience with specific practical ways to improve something, and whether the person had such previous experience before, or it's just theoretical knowledge. And the developer might not be just familiar with, like, who he is talking to. Let's put it this way. Would you take driving advice from me?
If you explain it, yes, why not?
Yeah, because, like, we are pretty much in the similar situations here. Would I take riding motorcycle advice from you?
Probably not.
I don't know whether you have relevant experience or not in terms of recommending something to me. And when I do my, riding, and I get recommendation from a person who might be, having superior position, being a better car driver than me, doing some other multiple things, but I don't always see the reasons why I should follow this advice, whether it's well explained, whether it's delivered in time, whether I actually need this advice. Maybe I'm fine with my riding and it doesn't actually impact anyone except me. Yeah, it's just my thing and my issue, my security, my passion. And I do it for a number of reasons that are not clear to an expert who recommends, well, actually, white helmets are much safer than the black helmets, according to very scientifically proved and experienced way.
It can be. I think I can read your remark both ways, in favor of some things as well as against some things, but then I guess it maybe speaks and circle backs to the frustration of the author of the article we started with, where he wanted and probably still wants experts to be trusted, or maybe at least given a little bit of a more benefit of a doubt than others, and that's difficult to achieve that. I can totally
It's
see
difficult
that.
to achieve mostly because we don't see people as experts or non-experts. We see people as people. And knowing whether you're an expert in software development, overall system design specifically, working with high-load system, and more specifically to a specific area. Plus, the way experts deliver their advice, let's say it's jerkish. Yeah, like no matter how useful it is, if somebody's being a jerk to me, even in a useful way, my ego can take, I don't know, 5 attempts, 10 attempts. It depends on my personal motivation to learn and to improve versus my acceptance or like my boundaries, personal boundaries here.
I think it should probably also depend not on only it definitely motivation to improve and be open to kind of other opinions is an important factor, but it's also to me a motivation to produce the best possible result must also play a role. If I think of myself as a person being rather receptive to feedback, and sometimes it can be hurtful because when the feedback is such that my ideas or my opinion was not correct or was not the best one given circumstances, and the salvation I give to myself is that we get to arrive to a better result when I accept others' opinion or suggestions or feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I'm really curious now how you will digest the style of the author of the book that we are going to read for the next book club or listen at Audible, Oren Clough, because I think that he actually has a tendency of appealing to authority in many of the chapters. And as you go through chapter 1, I'm sure you'll be triggered by a number of things about expertise there.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But I guess I'm kind of going to be a bit immune to that thing in books because I kind of came to accept that this is how people do things to appeal or catch attention of general public, and I just gloss over them mostly, I think. But let's see. It would be I imagine it would be an interesting read.
So, spoiler alert, the next episode is going to be a book club, and in case you're interested, you might read a review or an article about the book by Oren Clough, Pitch Anything.
All right. So you pitched this book to me, and we are reading and discussing it next time.
So, good weeks.
Right? Yeah. Good weeks.